Hi everyone, this is Ishika Kesarwani. I welcome you all to the Tech Talk, and today we have the Aditya Oberai, a developer advocate at Appwrite and an avid tech community and hackathon enthusiast. I would first like you to introduce yourself to the listener.
Thanks a lot, Ashika. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. I'm Aditya. I'm currently a dev advocate here at Appwrite. And aside from that, I've been around tech communities for the last 3 years or so. I've actively contributed through programs affiliated with Google, with Microsoft, Twilio, Major League Hacking, primarily, among other things. And I honestly just love joining hackathons, helping out people, building stuff myself, and honestly just having fun.
Indeed. Like, since you're the developer advocate and there's a trend now, like every other wants to get into it. So, would you like to tell the listeners about this new position that has come up?
Sure. So, fun fact, the space of developer relations, the umbrella which holds developer advocacy, is actually not a new domain. Companies like Microsoft have actually had technical evangelists for the last 20 years, working with their customers and their audiences to get the word out about their different products. So it's actually not as new as it might seem. That being said, as a space, it is at a very nascent stage. It has started growing recently, for sure, and a big reason for that is the fact that the world is highly tech enabled, and it's only going to increase on that front as we go forward. Until 5, 6, 10 years back, the number of companies that you would see catering to developers was honestly minimal. You'd have companies catering to businesses or the general consumer, your B2B or B2C organizations. But it's only more recently that something called B2D or business to developer companies have started growing, right? So, when you had companies and organizations that started catering to developers, what that meant is that aside from people building, you needed someone who could help someone else build, right? Someone who could get the word out, someone who could communicate with these developers, someone who could bind them together, keep them engaged, someone who could create content for them or educate them. So as the world became more tech enabled, and companies started catering to developers, you started needing these bridges at these companies, and this bridge is what developer relations as a space does. And this is essentially what developer advocates do. We are the voice of the developer for the organization. We're there to help them out, whether it's with issues, building with our products. We're there to help out, create content for them, to help them understand about this tech a lot better. We're helping get the word out on different social channels, ensuring that they're able to learn about our updates or information faster. And there's a lot of other things that come along with it, but primarily this is how a lot of us developer advocates are active.
And definitely agree to that. There's a lot of thing that is happening under this umbrella. So, like according to you, like being a beginner or being a college student, how can I get a job in that? How can one look for such opportunities, and what are the basic requirements that they might need for at least being an intern in this position?
So, in my honest opinion, I don't think you should start by targeting developer advocacy as or developer relations as your as your target job. And my reason for that is that when I talk about developer relations or developer advocacy, as I mentioned earlier, it touches on a few different fronts, right? um, Specifically being, you're someone who can play with code, you're someone who can work with content, and you're someone who can support communities, because your audience or your community, that's going to be most of your base that you're working with. Content, of course, is necessary because you're either getting the word out verbally or through written content, right? And code, being able to build is a mandate, because at the end of the day, if you don't build with your products, you will never understand what's good about them as well as what's bad. You won't understand where they lack. You won't understand where they help out more. Until you're able to do so, it is very, very difficult to build a sense of developer empathy. So, developer advocacy and developer relations generally sit somewhere between code, community, and content, in my opinion. And what that does is it means you've basically got to have experience on these three different fronts, right? Now, what I recommend typically to most people is to individually focus on these fronts, because while DevRel is bringing them together, they are their own standalone spaces as well. Communities and community management is its own space today. Software engineering and development, of course, has been for a very long time, and so is content creation and technical writing. It's not that these don't stand independently. They're all spaces with their pros. They're all spaces with their cons. And you know, I think anyone as a student or as a professional, before making the decision to jump towards dev advocacy, should get experience on these three fronts independently and individually before they take a decision on whether they even like these individual spaces. Because if you don't like these individually, bringing them all together is not going to help you have a happy day-to-day life. So I honestly don't recommend people to kind of just decide before they actually start doing any of these three that they want to target developer relations. I didn't myself. I think I had spent about 2 years in communities building projects with, I'd done a technical internship. I'd been actively working with backend technologies and cloud and APIs. I'd worked on some blogs, done quite a bit of public speaking on stages as well as in live streams, and I had built communities independently and for a brand through an internship. So it's only after doing all of that did I even think of this decision as to whether this was the right fit for me. And this is actually why developer advocacy and developer relations were often roles and are still often roles that require some amount of experience. And that is because students doing all of these at such an early stage is in general an exceptional scenario. It isn't the general case, right? It's only now that that world has become a little more open to younger professionals, and that's because there are so many organizations that need people in this space, and there just aren't enough people entering. So those lines have slightly blurred out, and alternative experiences like open source and development are being considered aside from just conventional software engineering jobs as your proof of work. So that's why it's open for students. But I will say that before you think about taking this career up, please try all of these individual aspects and evaluate how much you like them, what actually you like doing within these, what you don't, and then think about whether dev advocacy is something you want to even consider as a career. And if that doesn't end up to be the case, that's totally all right.
Yeah, I actually do agree to the point that you said that you should know how the product works, you should know how you code, you should know how internally it works. Because if you don't know, how are you going to tell the other person about it? So that's the point.
Personally, if I talk about myself, I can't do dev advocacy for every product in the world. If tomorrow I end up joining an MLAI startup, I'd be close to worthless because I have zero understanding of that space. So no matter how much, how whatever credentials I might carry in the past as someone in DevRel, that doesn't work out, right? Because that's a product I can't relate with. Similarly, if it's a product I don't enjoy working with, I wouldn't be happy advocating for it either, right? So it's something that has to be taken on a case-to-case basis. And while some foundational skills are there, don't just rush to every random thing that you see with this title, because not all of it is going to add to you, and not everywhere can you add that value either.
Definitely. So, Aditya, I have seen that you have contributed to so many events, and the most that you've been known for are the hackathons. Definitely. From being a hackathon to organizer, that's literally everyone is talking about you. So, what really got the motivation in you? You've been doing this for a very long time, I see. So,
Yeah.
what got you out of that, comfort zone of a student, and how you got the interest into it?
Hmm. Honestly, it kind of just happened by chance. I remember back in first year when I joined, I had been in a residential school beforehand, so I was used to doing stuff aside from class. So first day I joined, I was like, I cannot be someone who just sits in class and studies and does nothing else. I needed something else to do. And clubs where I took a little interest, some of our department's clubs. So I joined a couple of them, and I got to know they're hosting the department's Tech Fest, the third edition of that Tech Fest, and that actually had their first ever 24-hour hackathon. So
Mhm.
I thought, why not? I had no idea what hackathons were going to be like, but let's volunteer and help out anyway. So I went in and I chose the best ever domain that I could have helped out in, and that was sponsorship. Because why not? honestly,
I learned
honestly, the
all
reason I chose sponsorship,
at that time.
I honestly chose that because I knew a lot of people won't take that. It's not easy work, so I'm gonna get that opportunity anyway. And I spent the next months cold calling, cold emailing, but I actually ended up getting some sponsorship. That was kind of a plus, and things worked out. But I thoroughly had a ton of fun throughout all of that experience, and being there throughout the night of the hackathon was honestly something. To see people, 150, 160 people sitting there at night, just coding away and building something just because they wanted to, not because someone had asked them to, was I think that it is inspiring to an extent, but also we were having fun. I think we were chilling, we were joking around, we were having coffee, a lot of coffee, a lot more of coffee, because why not? But it was honestly just I didn't sleep that night, stayed up 40 hours straight around those 2 days, but I just had a ton of fun, and I knew that I wanted that again. So yeah, that one experience just kind of got me hooked to this space. And just a few months down the line, I joined my first ever community program, the Microsoft Student Partners, which is now known as the Learn Student Ambassadors, if anyone is aware of that, the MLSA. That's what it used to be called earlier. And because of the MSP program, I got a chance to attend a meetup at HackCBS, the hackathon of Shahid Sukhdev College of Business Studies, which is in DU. And that was one of the first two events that MLH partnered with in the Asia Pacific region. It was actually the Asia Pacific launch. It was happening simultaneously at HackCBS and LNM Hacks, which is LNM IIT's hack. And HackCBS saw Mike Swift, the CEO, the co-founder of MLH, join in. And just hearing his story, being able to interact with him, meeting some folks from Microsoft. We had Christopher Harrison and Vanessa Diaz from US over as well, aside from Arkadyuti Saha and Simran Jha from India. And just being there, interacting with all of these people, meeting fellow MSPs, meeting more hackers, I think I realized how big the space could be. So aside from just being fun, I saw the potential the space had, and how it could allow me to grow. And I guess after that I just stayed around. Like, that's all I
You
did,
just went
just
to
stuck
go,
around.
and then you're yeah, like I literally had somehow the same story. I myself got into sponsorship just because of the name. It
Nice.
really sounds great. And then, even for me, like my whole development journey, it all started with hackathons. The thrill, the feel that everyone has, the atmosphere. It's like so exciting. It was always fun working on some random projects and just
Think about
having
this.
fun.
How many times in your college life have you built something not because a teacher has told you, not because the department needs it, not because it's a requirement for a job, not because it's not because it's a requirement for a test? How many times have you actually built something for yourself? That's what
Honestly,
hackathons give you.
and that's exactly why we have hackathons.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So, Aditya, like I have seen that you have been working on various technologies like C Sharp, .NET. Microsoft Azure
Oh,
services,
my
etc.
heart.
And I haven't seen many students working on that. So, what
Yeah,
was your motivation to do that? Like, was it a part
honestly,
of your curriculum, or just something interesting, or just some project that needed that?
again by chance. So, I mentioned, right, that I got involved in the MSP program. This was
Mhm.
September 2019 that, we got started. And the program, even till today, one of the requirements, one of the milestones of the program is to actually complete a learning path on Microsoft Learn, which is an online learning platform that Microsoft has created for, and, they've got content and courses around different Microsoft tech. The one I ended up selecting by chance was one around developing Windows applications, and that essentially included, a little. It was essentially a tutorial course teaching how to build an application for UWP apps, Universal Windows Platform apps, which you would have seen on Windows 8 and Windows 10, and that actually required C Sharp and .NET. So that was the first time I was exposed to C Sharp as a language, and it felt very familiar to me because since school I'd been playing around, I'd been working with Java as a part of my curriculum. Now Java and C Sharp came out pretty close by; they were syntactically similar, so I took to C Sharp pretty quickly. And I thought this is a nice language and I can build stuff here, and UWP looks interesting. So why not? Right. That's kind of how I got started with C Sharp. And then, I saw that they've got a thing called Xamarin, which lets you build, it lets you build cross-platform apps. Xamarin used to be an independent company that got acquired by Microsoft. Fun fact: the former CEO of GitHub, Nat Friedman, he was actually the co-founder of Xamarin. So Xamarin actually I found to be pretty cool. It let me build apps for phones as well as the desktop together, and I kind of just started hacking with that. I just went to hackathons. I built a decent bit with Xamarin, and I enjoyed it. And in all of this while, I just thought C Sharp was honestly a really good language. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience of it. It was a powerful language. I could build a lot of things with it because here I was able to build apps for the phone, apps for the desktop, and as I went forward, I saw you could build apps for the internet. You could build APIs. You can do game development. You can do ML. You can do IoT stuff with .NET. It's that powerful a platform, and I just started scratching the surface of that, and I thoroughly just enjoyed the experience of it. I think on that note, a big reason why a lot of students don't adopt this is because .NET is something that quite a few curriculums have, but in a very outdated manner. Um, some have Java, some have .NET, some have both. We had Java at college. A lot of times, a lot of curriculums showcase both of these in a very outdated manner. They work with old versions of the SDK, where, of course, you know, the developer experience may not have been as good. I got to try my hand for the very first time at modern.net, and I think it's a fantastic platform to work with. For that matter, a lot of students, as they grow into their professional journeys, as they become younger professionals, as they work for larger enterprises, get to experience more .NET. I think that's a space that has always appreciated .NET a lot more. And for that matter, Java and .NET are still very, very um, prominent in enterprise spaces, and they're very, very relevant today. I think more and more people need to try .NET, especially students. It's a wonderful platform. It has wonderful tooling, great to work with, lets you build a lot of different things. It has an amazing community around it because it's been around for so long. There's a lot of professionals working with it and a lot of people willing to help. So I
Yeah,
thoroughly endorse
actually,
it, and I hope more people try it out.
yeah, I've seen so many old companies still using these frameworks, and
Even
yeah,
new
that's the
ones,
thing.
like
Because they don't want to shift back to the new technologies that is coming up. So that's
another
the
thing,
thing.
just like even aside from that, forget the older ones, among the newer ones as well, you've got modern.net is performant, good to work with. Do you know Stack for Overflow runs on .NET? Their entire backend is based on
Like,
.NET.
I thought that.
Um, most of Azure services are based on .NET. Siemens,
Mhm.
they use a lot of .NET, Siemens Healthineers. So you've got a lot of organizations that are heavily utilizing .NET for their backend, and it works pretty damn well.
But then again, like, what's your view on this? Like, in the future, do you really think that it's going to continue? Because, there's still so
.NET's
many
open source
languages
now.
making the whole, process so much easier.
Yeah, it's going to continue for sure, for quite a while. And the reason for that is that let's take another example. Let's look at C++. Do you think
Mhm.
C++ is irrelevant today?
It's not, but we still use it.
Most organizations which need to prioritize on performance, which need to work on low level optimization, which need are still leveraging C++. I know some, I can't disclose, but I know some massive organizations which are using C++ in their backends. If you want to build for the desktop, especially for Windows, if you want to build games, you need C++ and C Sharp. Unity is based on C Sharp. Unity needs C Sharp, by the way. Unreal
Mhm.
Engine is using C++. Languages like these are still prevalent, and they do have their relevance. They're not going away on that note. And that is exactly why these languages still see focus today. Now, in the current times, .NET has been made fully open source. It's up there on GitHub. People can interact with them. People can participate there. People can help out there. It's no more just a closed language like it was at one point. And aside from just being an OOP language, just from aside from supporting OOP like C Sharp, .NET supports functional programming as well. F Sharp is there, and that again has a fantastic community around it. And there's so much love that I see for F Sharp among the functional programming community. I don't see them going away for a very long time.
Yeah, like even I've heard a lot about that as well. So,
Exactly.
okay, so like, do you have any tips for the listeners who are listening to this podcast, like what they should do and how they should tackle up their, you know, situations and getting out of their comfort zones?
Honestly, okay, I have to think about how many times I've actually broken my comfort zone now, to be honest. I think when we talk about breaking the comfort zone, it's a very interesting thought and an interesting topic about it, because if I talk about my aims and targets, I've always prioritized on fronts I've liked, right? If you like something, if you enjoy something, I mean, that could be considered your comfort zone. Um, so it's always kind of difficult to actually define what it means to break this. What I will say is that it's all right to figure out something you like and work towards. You don't just have to work towards something you don't like for the sake of it, but just make sure that when you're working towards a thing, the process you have, the hard work you have, that does not see any compromises. um yeah, I guess that's probably the area that breaking comfort zone means to refer to, but it's just such an interesting topic, so many different interpretations. So yeah, what I'll say is that once you figure out something you want to work towards, don't compromise on the process. uh, there are no free handouts. Nobody gets uh, you know their future handed in a silver platter, at least the ones who are building it themselves. It's one thing to come from a privileged background and have that over and to be a part of a dynasty, but that's the exceptional case. That's not the general case. So yeah, don't compromise on your hard work. And I'm telling you, once you're building yourself and things actually start working out, you're gonna thoroughly love it. I think for me particularly, I'm aside from maybe working towards certain end goals, I kind of just worked on stuff that made me happy. I was happy putting in the hard work on things I liked, and that's kind of something that most people have to figure out. Because if you're not happy with your day to day, maybe you need to rethink about what goals you have. And by being happy about your day to day, I don't mean every single day you're just going to be nice and shiny and laughing and grinning about your work. There are tough days, things that are going to really beat on you as well. But you need to be content with the direction you have and the path you have, right? And as long as you're content with that, and you're content with the decisions you're taking, I think it's worth putting in that effort in that process. And there are times when it seems like things aren't working out. There are times when it seems like everyone else is winning, but just because other people win doesn't mean you can't. So trust your process, when you're in there, and it'll all work out.
Yeah, I always believe that there's nothing wrong in experimenting. I mean, there's always something
Oh yeah,
up for you.
exactly.
And getting out of your comfort zone is literally the first step that you just have to take, and then everything is there literally. And I always believe that you need to just shoot for the moon. At least you definitely fall somewhere, at least among the stars. I guess
Exactly.
on that note, we can wrap up the session. Thank you so much, Aditya, for taking out your time. It was definitely a very insightful session. And
Thanks for
yeah,
having me.
stay tuned. We'll be coming up with a lot more videos. Thank you so much.
All right. See ya.